Well, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, September the 2nd, 2014. Happy September. Looks like we are on the downhill slide of summer, sadly enough. Expected here in Indianapolis, supposed to be in the 90s until about Friday, and then it looks like we're back into some fall weather, which I am quite pleased about, so no worries there. This 90-degree stuff. Finally got my tomatoes red, but expecting some strong storms. I know we woke up about 4 o'clock this morning with some stuff. Tornadoes out in Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, all of those Midwest states yesterday. So, you know what happens when the temp drops from 90 down into 70. It doesn't happen just because. So we're keep your eyes to the skies and stay safe out there. Lots of stuff going on all over the news that you need to pay attention to. I know I've been talking about some stuff. There was last week a school in Columbus, Ohio that had some threats of a Islamic nature. They shut the school down, phone threats, found out nothing happened with it as far as I know to this time, but keeping an eye out on it. And then yesterday it hit the news, which we reported on, down in Columbus, Indiana. Sensing a theme here with Columbus. Anyways, Columbus, Indiana then, next state over to the west. We had several churches down that way that were graffitied with Islamic messages on it. So among everything else going on out there in the world, we're paying attention. And just stay safe. Not saying that what's being reported is actually what happened, but because we all know about how our news likes to manipulate propaganda. But just eyes and ears open, stay safe, pay attention to what's going on around you, and have a plan. So, interesting guest today, and let's get into talking with him. Let me introduce him a little bit. I just popped him up to our pink Facebook page because he has a nice sale going on all week. A little update, too. Our book hit number 4 this morning on Hot New Releases, so if you get a chance, check out Alpha Farms. Made a couple updates on it late last night, pertaining to a couple glitches that we found, but should be good to go this morning. So we hit number 4, which is awesome and exciting, and we had our first giveaway last week, and part of that giveaway was what I refer to as the triplets in the book, and that was a nice tactical flashlight. So, giveaway number 2, which will be coming up, and he probably does not know this yet, our next giveaway will be a nice slingshot package, because we can't have enough tools of the trade out there. So, let's get into this. From Shot Shooting Sports in North Carolina, I believe, is the one and only Nathan Masters. Good morning down there.
Good morning. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
Very good. Enjoying some nice fall weather in the Carolina mountains.
Ah, awesomeness. So I did get that right. I knew you were down that way somewhere. But trees starting to turn down that way? The leaves? Are you guys all still green? Or did I just totally lose you? Nathan, you still there? Oh, hang on one second. Looks like we lost our guest. All right, Nathan, you back with us?
Back with you.
All righty. So, are the leaves changing down there already? You guys still all nice and green?
Up high, they're starting to turn a bit. Some of the maples and the poplar, they're starting to turn a little bit yellow, but we're still into the low 80s during the day, so not quite fall.
Yeah, we're anticipating. I'm not a warm weather child of any degree, so I anticipate and look forward to the 70, 60-degree weather. I know, though, in parts of northern Indiana, they were talking about, quite honestly, the leaves were changing about a month ago, and we're expected a very cold winter again. So... But, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Be good squirrel hunting. Get those leaves off the trees.
There you go. Well, you have a tool to do that with. So, you actually met my husband at a shooting match here in Indiana. You drove all the way up here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll travel anywhere for a slingshot tournament.
Is that right? So how did you get started with slingshots?
It really started out as a hobby. I've always been interested in anything that shoots. So I started out with the slingshot as a child. About 4 years old, my granddad made me one. Then, BB guns and 22s took over my life. And in college, I got into archery really big, bow hunting, shooting a longbow, and that carried through until my mid-30s. And one day I was helping my dad clean out his shop, and I found a slingshot in there, and I took it out and shot it just like I did my bow, and hit a pine cone and thought it was a fluke, then hit it 3 or 4 more times, and I was hooked. And slingshots quickly became just my way to relax in the evenings. I'd come home and make slingshots, shoot slingshots, trade them with other folks around the world who did the same. It was just a hobby.
Around the world. So this is
the world.
This is a bigger phenomenon out there than I think a lot of people understand.
Yeah, outside of the U.S., the slingshot is still fairly well regarded as a precision shooting tool. In the U.S., it's kind of been relegated to a child's toy or something the kids bust windows out with. But in Spain and China, for instance, there's huge league shooting. So folks come together from around the country to shoot in tournaments together. They have their own shooting leagues where they meet once a week and shoot together for fun and fellowship. And it's just starting to make its way here to the U.S.
Do you think that's because we put such high regards on firearms where it's illegal in a lot of those countries?
Yes, that's the reason. Everybody likes to shoot. It's just human nature to be a marksman. And in those countries, their air guns are limited to a certain amount of foot-pounds, and most of them can't have cartridge weapons. So slingshots are the natural progression. So one thing that's really picked up in the U.S. is high ammo prices. You can't find a cheaper shooting sport than slingshots.
So the ammo crisis that we just went through helped you guys a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Used to, folks wouldn't think twice about going out and buying an entire brick of 22s and shooting them in an afternoon. And now if you get a brick, you ration them out like it's your last bit of water. Whereas slingshots, for the same amount of money, you can shoot all day, recover your ammo, and keep on shooting.
True. My husband has a little magnet that he takes out in the yard with him, and he goes around and he scoops everything up that doesn't hit into the little pit that he has built. But in your opinion, what takes more talent, slingshots or firearms?
Probably the slingshot's going to require a bit more hand and eye coordination, but I would put it on par with a bow. If you can get consistent with a recurve or a longbow, you can shoot a slingshot just as well. Firearms with optical sights kind of make it cheating. As long as you got a clean trigger press, you're probably going to hit your target if you can hold it on the target. Whereas a slingshot, you have to coordinate a few more movements, but by no means is it difficult.
And you have some pretty nice slingshots, too. We own multiple ones, and we'll be getting some more. With the price package that I talked about earlier, you have a nice little package that I'm gonna get that has a slingshot, it has the ammo, and it has goggles that all come with it together, which I think is awesome. It's a one-stop shopping. Now, you have on this week, is it the entire week you have a Labor Day sale going on?
Yep, through Sunday.
So I've posted his website on our Pink page, but if you go to, why don't you tell everybody how to track you down? Website.
Yeah, so we're at simpleshot.com, and that's simple-shot.com, or a dash between the simple and shot. Or you can just look us up as Simple Shot Shooting Sports on Google. We'll pop right up there. But we are pretty much everything slingshot. So whether you're looking to do it yourself and just buy some bands and ammo, or if you want to buy a whole package, we've got that and everything in between.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Say I'm new into slingshots and I want to get started. What kind of things should I look for?
Okay. So what it really comes down to with a slingshot is the real meat and potatoes of a slingshot is the rubber, the leather pouch that holds the projectile, and a perfectly spherical projectile. If you have those three things, the actual slingshot itself grows on trees, literally. So you could take a tree fork, as long as you have a matched and balanced band set, which is your rubber and your leather, and a perfectly spherical projectile that weighs the same from each projectile to each shot, then you're going to have a rig that's capable of astounding accuracy. A lot of folks, just want to pick up something and get started. For that, we recommend our Scout slingshot. And a couple of reasons there. That slingshot, we designed it where it could be held 3 different ways. So for folks that aren't familiar with a traditional Y-fork slingshot or your tree-fork slingshot, generally you put your thumb and forefingers up on the prongs, as opposed to like a wrist rocket, which you hold like a hammer. So folks come from two different backgrounds. The Scout slingshot you can hold in any of those configurations. So that's one bonus for the Scout. Another one is that we've got it set up to where you can put the bands on it several different ways. The bands can go over the top of the slingshot, around the side. Now, neither one is better than the other, but if you're an aimer or have different shooting styles, sometimes changing your band orientation helps with your aiming. And then finally, the Scout slingshot can accept any type of rubber you can imagine, meaning if you had a handful of office rubber bands, you could chain those together and have an effective band set. If you had strips of bicycle inner tube, you could still clamp it on there. And if you just wanted to pick up a set of tubes off of a wrist rocket from, say, Walmart, they're easy to find. Those will fit on there as well. So super adaptable slingshot. But coming back around to it, shooting bands that are matched, meaning that there's an equal amount of power on either side, a lightweight pouch, because you don't want to accelerate a pouch, you want to accelerate the projectile, and then a matched projectile. So whether that be marbles or hex nuts or stainless or steel ball bearings, it doesn't really matter, just as long as they match with one another. After that, it's just repetition and practice, range time.
Awesome. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said that's a sort of a roundabout way to answer your question.
Okay. So really, they're very adaptable. So in the preparedness world, pluses for a slingshot versus a firearm.
Okay, a firearm always has its place. I would never dismiss a firearm.
Good.
It's a superior weapon system. However, a slingshot, some advantages of the slingshot. One is silent. So if you are in a situation where you need to obtain food or send a projectile down range without knowing, giving away your position, a slingshot is superior. Very, very quiet. Another thing, it's plenty capable of taking small game. It's not difficult at all to generate 10 to 12 foot-pounds of energy with an average slingshot combo. So meaning that you've got a set of bands that aren't overly tough to pull. So if you're cold or tired, you can still generate 10 to 12 foot-pounds of energy on the target, which doesn't sound like a lot, but a well-placed 10 to 12 pounds of energy inside of a half-inch ball bearing on the skull of a squirrel or a rabbit, that's lights out.
But so would it be possible to utilize, and I know a lot of people have talked about this, and I don't think they've actually thought it through, talking about what you just said when it comes to self-protection. Would the slingshot would you recommend the slingshot to be utilized for self-protection?
I would. Reason being is that it's not that the slingshot is not capable of generating energy, but the problem is putting it on target. So let's say you were in a situation where your life was compromised. All the blood runs away from your hands and your head to your organs to get you that fight or flight space. If you've got to pick your slingshot up, put the ammo into the pouch, hold that tiny little pouch, draw it back to a consistent anchor, acquire your target, and then release, there's way too many steps there. If you have a firearm, you've practiced with it, it's one movement out of the holster or wherever you've got it concealed. At least you've got a bang, you've got another bang behind it. With a slingshot, once you let go and miss, there's no way you're reloading. So I would never look at a slingshot as a primary self-defense tool.
So you're basically just going to piss someone off, is what you're going to do.
You're either going to piss them off or just miss.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be there trying to reload a slingshot when you should be running.
Yeah, somebody in the chat room, we have a little chat room going on. And actually, there are a couple people in there. I mean, considering how early it is for a lot of people. Captain Gringo, good morning, everybody in the chat room. Lady Pitbull, Joel's mom with preps in there. Lady Pitbull said that you can shoot. Well, I'm not going to say exactly what she said because she used some colorful language already this morning. But she said you could shoot them in the eye. But I think you bring up a good point. You have to really be good in order to do that. From what I understand, though, a lot of you guys that came to the meetup here in Indiana, when was it, last month?
Yeah.
Are extremely talented. So how well do you put your faith into your ability?
Well, if I'm calm and I know my life's not threatening. I'm hanging out with my buddies. I know I can do amazing things with a slingshot.
I've heard you guys were able to strike matches from, light them on fire.
Yeah, light them on fire from 10, 15 meters, cut playing cards. None of that's a problem when you're relaxed. But I'll just take an example. So last year we had an epic squirrel season here. And I'll go back to slingshot hunting for just a second. But for anybody that's hunted, you know the thrill of the hunt, that rush that you get, especially when you're on game. So I was really focused, shooting exceptionally well. I'd already taken 2 squirrels, and I had a squirrel come up the tree right in front of me. I shot and missed. And that miss rattled me. It rattled me enough to where I was fumbling to get reloaded, and all I was doing was hunting squirrels.
And you're a professional. Compared to the normal person out there.
So if that was what a squirrel did to me, just hunting them, if somebody was actually, in a position to harm me or my family, I don't think I would have the wherewithal. I wouldn't want to guarantee that I had the wherewithal to manipulate a small ball bearing, pull it back in a rubber band. I would find a way to find cover or get out of the situation rather than engage the situation with a slingshot.
Gotcha. More of a gray man stance like we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Excellent, excellent. So, as a professional, your recommendation then is for slingshot purpose, if for ownership, is more for securing a food source, small game, squirrels, rabbits. How big of a game would you look at going up to for a slingshot, an average size?
You got to remember with a slingshot kills by blunt force trauma, not hemorrhaging or penetration. Now, you can penetrate the skin of some game, and it will cause some internal damage. But the primary way a slingshot kills is just to hit the target really hard. So you're basically looking for headshots. That's your ideal shot. So with that in mind, your smaller game, up to a raccoon-sized animal. Now, there are folks out there. There's a fellow down in Florida, ex-Navy SEAL, and he has taken deer with a slingshot.
A deer?
That is an exception. He shot him right between the eyes, knocked him out, and then finished him off with a knife.
Okay. And was he using the same size ammo that you have on your site, or was it larger? Do you know?
He uses much larger ammo. He uses, I think he was using 40 caliber conicals. So they were like 250 grains. They were a substantial chunk of, and he was shooting them with really heavy tubes. He was shooting a slingshot. Most people have to work out to comfortably pull.
So in comparison to, say, like, I don't know, a baseball or something, what size would this ammo be that he was using?
Oh, well, I mean, put it into handgun size terms. Everybody knows what, a little bit larger than a 45 ACP slug.
Okay.
So, 200 to 250 grains. This guy will go up to 300 on some of his stuff, but, that's a pretty heavy projectile to throw with just rubber.
And typically, what size is the ammo that you use?
So for tournaments, it would be somewhere around the 50 to 60 grain weight, which is roughly a 3/8 steel ball. For hunting, you want something around 100 to 125 grains. That's what most people settle on, because you can use enough rubber to where you're not straining your fingers to draw it back and still getting enough velocity to generate the downrange energy required to dispatch game. So it all comes down to just simple science. You basically want 10 to 12 foot-pounds on target. So, just working out that equation.
Okay. Now, let's talk about this rubber that you keep referring to, and it's the bands on the slingshot. Anytime we end up at the hospital or I have physical therapy on my knee, my husband likes to, and I'll say this, he borrows and does not return the rubber bands that you use for either to wrap around your arm to take blood with, or that I use to exercise my knee with, the big colorful exercise bands. So what do you use on your bands? Yours are all, you custom make yours, correct?
We do. But the key with the material is you're looking for something that has a high rate of retraction. So not all rubber bands are the same, and you can feel it. If you pick up a handful of office rubber bands of different makes and stretch them, you can feel how quickly they want to retract to their relaxed state. And the ones that retract more quickly are the ones that have a higher ratio of latex in them, pure latex. So you were mentioning the tourniquet bands you see in a hospital. Before there were so many latex allergies, they were pure latex, and those were some of the fastest bands you could put on a slingshot for certain weight ammo. What you've got to look for is a lot of the stuff you'll get in hospitals these days is latex free. So it still serves the function of for a tourniquet or whatnot, but it's not as good of a slingshot band. Now the TheraBand, which is the rehabilitation bands that you use for physical therapy and whatnot, those are great. It's generally the gold color is the best. And just make sure you get the stuff that's not labeled latex free. Outside of that, we buy rolls of rubber straight from a supplier that gets it out of Malaysia. It's pure medical latex. The downside of that is because it is pure latex, it tends to degrade quicker than other materials, but it's far superior as far as performance goes. And with slingshots, you kind of have to look at slingshots or slingshot bands would ammo for a gun. It's a sunk cost. Every time you pull the trigger, that's, you're ringing up the dollars. Just like every time you draw back that slingshot, there is a cost associated with it because they wear out. So, and you always want the best performance you can get. So with that in mind, flat latex bands are generally far superior to, say, your tubular surgical rubber tubes that you would find on a wrist rocket. The main reason is that they can retract back to their relaxed state much more quickly. There's not as much internal friction. But that starts getting into all the science of slingshots. And if you want to go that direction, I'm glad to talk with you about the nuts and bolts, but it can get dull for folks who just want to know what you need. And what you need is pure latex.
Okay.
Or TheraBand Gold.
Yeah, I'm looking at your website right now, which again, just so everybody can hear, it's www.simple.com. But you have both kinds. You have the flat latex, and then you have the rubber tubing. And you said the flat latex or the flat bands is by far more superior than the tubing itself, correct?
Well, that's an argument of great contention in the slingshot community. That is my opinion, and it's also the opinion of most top shooters. They both will perform admirably. Most people find more consistency from shot to shot in flat bands. Not to say that you can't shoot tubular bands really well as well.
Well, would you use one for something other than the other one? Or is it just
not universal? Now,
okay.
A lot of folks would say if you're going to throw a slingshot into your bug-out bag and you're not going to touch it until you need it, they would probably go with a tubular band for two reasons. One, it's a little more robust, so if it gets caught down between a seat or a piece of gear in your bag, it's not going to wear or nick or fray as easy. It's a little more robust. And generally, they have UV stabilizers. That's one thing that really eats latex is sunlight. So that's an advantage for a tubular band. They're generally long-lasting when you just toss them in a bag. Outside of that, it comes down to personal preference.
Okay. Now, would you just toss your slingshot? Okay, you obviously know what a bug-out bag is. So would you just toss your slingshot into a bug-out bag? Would you put it in something? Would you vacuum seal it? Would you have a designated pocket on the outside? How would you go about storing a slingshot for long-term? And how many bands would you have extra with you?
One thing I do with all of my bug-out bags, and we've got to get a few of these more products on the website, but we've got a set of bands. And it's a latex product, and it was made for the mining industry. It's called latex.
Could you repeat
that? It's a sheet of material that they use to line mining chutes. And it just so happens it has great properties as a slingshot rubber. The upside of it is it's really thick, robust, and it's resistant to sunlight. And it throws heavy projectiles well. And when I say heavy projectiles, I'm generally thinking about stones, what you would find out and about. So we put together a band set with a large pouch on it that can feed. You can feed stones into it, or hex nuts, chunks of rebar, found ammunition. And we seal those up in vacuum sealed bags, then just stick just that with a couple of extra rubber bands to tie it onto a tree fork into your bag. So if you have two of those, they're sealed away. You've got it adds about 1.5 ounces to your. They're completely airtight. When you need them, pop them open. Hopefully you'll have a knife on you. Cut a fork off a tree. It'll take you maybe 5 to 10 minutes of whittling to have your actual slingshot. Tie those on. Look for your found objects, round river stones, chunks of rebar. You could do chunks of wheel weights. You've got a a hunting weight and ready slingshot right there.
Wow.
So that's the approach I generally take with it. Personally, I'll have a slingshot in my pocket.
Always handy and ready to use.
Always, yeah. You never know when you're going to get a chance to shoot.
Well,
that's another great
slingshot,
which I'll kind of bring full circle here, is one of the things that we promote. The biggest way we promote slingshots is the idea of marksmanship. So if you can buy into this notion that humans like to shoot things, as witnessed by, we like basketball, and I think people like to play basketball because there's this challenge of taking that ball and putting it in the basket. And people like to shoot bows and arrows because there's this challenge of standing on the other side of the field and putting that arrow on target. And people like to shoot handguns, not just because of the bang and destruction or whatever, it's to hit the target. There's something hardwired into us to work with our hands and eyes and cast our will, so to speak, beyond our physical self. It's a very human trait. So humans are marksmen. And one great thing about slingshots is that it hones the marksman's eye. So if you have your hands and your eyes working together to send a projectile down range, with a slingshot you get all these great feedbacks that you don't get with other shooting sports. With a compound bow, those arrows are really traveling too fast to witness them in flight. You never see a bullet fly from the gun. You just see the impact on target. Whereas with a slingshot, you're bringing your hands and your eye together to send a projectile down range, and you can actually see that projectile in flight, so you're getting that little bit of information back for your brain to process, whether you're on target or not, and then you're actually seeing it hit, and whether you hit close or not. And something magical hardwiring in our brain there will pull our hands and eyes together for the next shot to get back on target. So what it really does is, for someone that, say you might be into the IDPA thing, and you need to acquire a target quickly and put your hands and your eyes and all those things line up in one moment. A slingshot allows you to do it without the bang, so you can do it in your backyard or your basement. It allows you to do it without, hearing a quarter drop in the bucket every time you press the trigger. It's inexpensive, and it's fun, and it's a great way to introduce children to the sport. I know when I was a kid, I'm not very old, but when I was a little boy, they'd throw our BB guns in our backpack and ride across town, bristled with BB guns and all sorts of other things, and people would wave at us. And today, if a kid rides across town with a BB gun in his backpack,
yeah, you're in trouble.
So there's a whole generation of kids that are being raised by parents that are fearful of guns, and they're probably never going to learn how to safely and responsibly use a firearm. And that is slowly going to erode away our desire to protect that right, because it just becomes not important because it never was a part of your heritage.
Yeah, very true.
Slingshots, on the other hand, have the ability to kind of sneak by, because most people still think, oh, it's just a toy. Little Johnny's playing with this slingshot. Well, that's a way through the radar of the soccer mom who won't allow Johnny to have a BB gun. So if you can get someone with a slingshot and teach them just fundamental range principles with a slingshot, treat the slingshot as a firearm. One, you're teaching them how to shoot, how to coordinate the hands and the eyes to put a projectile down range. Two, you're teaching them about range safety and firearm safety without the firearm. And at that point, perhaps you can start on that slippery slope of, all right, well, he's very responsible with the slingshot. Maybe a BB gun's okay. Then the kid gets a BB gun. If all goes well and we've got responsible parents and the kid isn't a miscreant, maybe he'll get a 22. And then maybe he'll get out in the field and start hunting. Maybe he'll take up, wing shooting. Who knows? But it gets folks into the shooting sports. It's a way to introduce folks to marksmanship without all the social stigmas that are attached to firearms these days.
Yes, and it's getting worse by the day. Do you know of any, I know you're in North Carolina, do you know of any national laws or state laws that would prohibit a slingshot or something along that line, or instances? Or is it pretty much under the radar?
Folks aren't going out of their way to look for slingshots, but there is legislation on the books. New Jersey, they're banned throughout New Jersey, all slingshots. Then there's certain jurisdictions that have regulations on slingshots. Some areas don't allow wrist-brace slingshots. Then there's an old law in the book there was a tool used back in the late 1800s called the slingshot, which is more or less just a sap, a leather bag, or just a small billy club, flexible billy club, and they call it a slingshot. And I think that got transposed into a slingshot after it lost fare. So to answer the question, nobody's really looking for slingshots. I mean, as long as you're not stupid and doing something stupid with it, you're probably not going to have anybody being nosy or worrying about it. But yes, there is legislation out there banning slingshots, and in places like Germany, Germany, they don't allow any wrist-brace slingshots. There's other countries in the world that don't allow them at all.
I would assume since you ship all over the place that you would have to be up on those. Could you get in trouble for shipping them, say, to New Jersey? Or is that something in the go ahead.
I suppose if someone wanted to spend the money to go look for it, then yes. But, the other side of it is they're generally thought of in the populace as a child's toy. So if there's better ways to spend money, it's probably not going to be on slingshots. So as long as it's thought of a child's toy, I'm kind of okay with that because it keeps us under the radar. And if, the powers that be understood the energy that a slingshot's capable of generating, that may change things as well. They can be profoundly powerful.
All right, we're at the halfway point. Let's run back through. Now, let's give everybody your website and where you're located at, where they can look at your store. And then also, if you could, from what I understand, you have some pretty spectacular videos up on YouTube also. Yeah,
so on our website there at www.simple-shot.com, in the lower left-hand corner of the homepage, you'll see the YouTube icon. And we've got all of our videos broken up there into different and such. So if you're interested in how a slingshot tournament works, we've got lots of fun videos there. Be warned that at slingshot tournaments, we generally talk a lot of shit and have a lot of fun. So it may seem kind of goofy, and it is, but we actually do some top shelf shooting. We have a whole line of do-it-yourself, and that's another great thing about slingshots. It's any man and every man's weapon, or woman's. It's just available to everyone. It's as simple as a fork stick, some bits of rubber, a bit of leather, and a found projectile. And you can get pretty doggone good. And, a slingshot's probably accounted for more full bellies than a 22. It's just a guess, but think about all the old farm boys you've heard of. They're like, oh, yeah, when I was a boy, I took my bean flip out and I used to shoot the toes off birds on the power line. There's some truth to that. There's a lot of these old guys out there. My great-grandfather, he shot a slingshot without even having a frame. He just simply wrapped the rubber around his knuckles and shot like that. And I've seen him take plenty of birds and rats out of the chicken house. So that's the cool thing about slingshots. It's there for everyone. So we've got lots of do-it-yourself videos. So if you're the type of person that wants to make your own slingshot, we can set you up with all the raw materials to where you could cut the bands out you want. We've got die-cut bands. You can go out and cut your own fork off of a tree. If you're handy with wood or metals, you can cut your own frame out. Or if you're the type of person that just wants to buy a good quality product, we've got that too.
Yeah, but I will give you that. You have some nice slingshots going on. Like I said, we have several and plan on getting several more. My husband rolls every time he goes onto your website. But would you say it's probably, 90% men? Or do you think it's a little lower than that, men versus women in this shooting?
It's mostly men from our research, and there's not a lot of industry metrics out there on the slingshot community because we're still just a little tiny sub niche of the shooting sport community. We've been at this full time for 3 years now, so we're starting to gather.
Nathan, you there? Hello, hello. Nathan, you back? Hello? Nathan, did you make it back? Oh, we've got an audio problem with our guests on the other end. which is horrible because he is so knowledgeable. Give us here a minute here and see if we can track him back down. I'm not sure if he realizes that... Oh. All right. Nathan, did you join us? Nope, still having issues. Try and reconnect him here. Oh, failed again. Nathan?
Let's try that again.
Oh!
Must be solar flares or something.
Oh, well, Skype is not one of our best friends out there. So, it's not your fault. It's, Skype needs definitely some improvement when it comes to staying connected. But you were just getting into, that there isn't a whole lot of information on the breakdown between men and women in the industry. You guys have been in business now about, 3 years?
Yep.
What's your take? What's your take on?
Yeah, so in that time, and we have to go on what's available. So, like, if we look at our Facebook fan page, our primary demographic there is men 35 to 55. The really wealthy folks, they generally don't come towards it because, if you're really wealthy, you think of it as a toy. It's your average middle class, working man that enjoys shooting things. And most of the guys that are into it, they have a real childlike nature about them. They're not childish, but they enjoy the simple things in life. A lot of, we get a lot of folks that are traditional bow hunters. That really resonates with them. Guys that are into black powder. We want to just kind of take it back a step. But the thing is it's starting to pick up, seeing folks light a match with a slingshot. That gets people's attention.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're getting a lot of folks, like a couple of years ago, I went out to Gunsight Academy in Arizona. And towards the end of the week, I pulled out my slingshot, and one of the instructors said, well, can you hit anything with that? And I said, I'll go shot for shot with you. You pick the target and the distance.
No way.
So I put up an 8-inch, this gong target, and we were shooting at about 10 meters. And I shot first and hit it, and he shot and hit it. And I was like, come on, let's try something a little, more challenging here. You're a gun sight instructor. I want to see how badass you are. So I picked up some 45 casings off the range and set them up at about the same distance. And I gave him the first shot, and he missed. And I didn't. And he said, do it again. That was luck. So I did it again. And at that point, he holstered his gun and mumbled something about cheap range loads. And I continued picking off brass at, 10 meters. Now, all the instructors that were there that weren't too proud to consider the slingshot, they're all shooting slingshots now because they understand that cross-training with a slingshot improves their pistol handling skills. And it's absolutely true. I noticed this, I'm really big into archery, but I may not practice all summer. And then I'll pick up my bow about this time of year, getting ready for deer season, and go out and throw some arrows downrange, and I'm just right on. Similar movement, similar hand-eye relationships. Another thing I've noticed, I used to be really big into wing shooting. Haven't done that in a couple of years. Went out recently, and I was still shooting great. And I attribute that to slingshots because you're holding your hand out in front of you, acquiring the target, pressing the trigger. All those movements are very similar to slingshots. So if you can shoot all the time, it's going to make you a better shooter across all of your disciplines. That's at least my theory.
Yeah,
and validated by others.
Awesome. We're going to have to test out that theory, and it's a lot cheaper.
A lot cheaper. It's quiet. You can do it in the backyard. You can do it in the basement. And you can do it all the time. That's why I always have one in my pocket. If I step out in a parking lot somewhere and there's a can across the way and no one's looking, I'm going to take a shot at it.
Oh, don't give my husband ideas. You have no idea what you just started.
Oh,
we actually have off of our back porch now several traps that he's built. And he'll walk out there. He'll get up in the middle of a commercial if he's watching a movie or something. He'll go out, take a couple shots, and come back. And it's like nonstop all day long. It's hilarious.
Slingshots and barbecue. I was just barbecuing last night. So I stood there manning the grill with a pocket full of ammo, and I shot it the beer cans that I was emptying as I grilled. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, oh shoot, I had a question I was going to ask you. We talked about demographics for women specifically. Do you see a slingshot that's easier? Typically, women don't have as much strength in their wrist as a man does. Should they look or gravitate towards a certain type of slingshot versus another, or a different weight, or what would you recommend?
So the great thing about slingshots is, we'll kind of come back around to that whole thing about flat band rubber versus tubular rubber. So let's use this as an example to start with. Everybody knows what a wrist rocket is. Everyone has seen one. If you go to a big box store and you see a slingshot, it's probably going to be a tubular wrist rocket, where you slide your arm up through the handle, it braces on your wrist, you've got those heavy tubular bands. The reason those wrist rockets came around is because it was very easy to mass produce surgical tubing bands. And those surgical tubing bands were quite heavy to pull. So you needed a wrist brace. That made for a really bulky slingshot. And that's just kind of what, over the last 20, 30, 40 years, we've come to know as a slingshot. Prior to that, it was basically a tree fork or something like a whammo, which I don't know if folks might remember the whammo, but that was a handheld slingshot, and it used flat rubber. The reason it fell out of fashion, it was hard to mass produce. The flat rubber bands are more difficult to manufacture. It requires a human to tie them together. Whereas the tubular rubber, those can be mass produced with a machine fairly easily. So coming back full circle, with flat band rubber, you're able to draw back. Let's say we have a wrist rocket and a flat band slingshot, and they both draw, say, 12 pounds at 30 inches. And you're shooting the same size projectile. The flat band slingshot is going to shoot, on average, 10, 15, 20% faster than the same tubular rubber slingshot drawing at the same weight. So a flat band rubber slingshot's much more efficient. What that allows you to do is get rid of the wrist brace, so now the slingshot can slide right into your pocket. But the other side of it is you don't have to have a lot of heavy draw weight to have a projectile that's moving pretty dang fast. So to come back around to your question, one thing to consider for women is just what's the size of your hand. You want a slingshot frame that fits comfortably in your hand. If you can't get your hand around it, then you're not going to shoot it as well. But you could take those same bands that pull nicely and give you good velocity and put them on a frame that fits you, and you're going to have a match setup. So I guess in a roundabout way to answer your question is all you need to pay attention to is making sure the slingshot fits comfortably in your hand and that you're drawing bands back that you can comfortably manage. There's no need to overband yourself.
Awesome.
You reach a point of diminishing returns.
Anything out there that you found or run across when it comes to people that have arthritis or some kind of lack of power in their hands? Yes.
So we've got a lot of old guys that have arthritis, and we actually developed an attachment system for one of our slingshots, the Scout slingshot, called the Flip Flip. Because normally you tie the slingshot bands on with a strip of rubber, which requires some manual dexterity. I was getting a lot of complaints from older guys who are like, my hands just aren't what they used to be. Can you do something for me? So the great thing about the slingshot is that these guys can still have a flat shooting slingshot with relatively light pull. So, 8 to 15 pounds is a good range for slingshot pull, which really isn't that much. The other side of it is giving them to actually hold the sling that they can comfortably hold, that doesn't dig into the hand, and that doesn't put a lot of torque on the wrist. So we've got a couple of different slingshots for different types of shooters. We've got one called the Rambone. It's meant to be held like a hammer, which is a strong grip, just like you grip a baseball bat or a hammer. You combine that with lighter bands. If you have somebody that has arthritis, they've got a nice, big, bulky grip to put their hand around, plenty of surface area. And as long as the bands are light enough for them to comfortably pull, they can go out and shoot and have a great time with it.
Awesome. You thought of everything.
Yeah, may not be able to, pull heavyweight hunting bands, but if you're just wanting to, plink cans in the yard and just the enjoyment of shooting, that's available to everyone. My kids have been shooting since they were 4, and, they'd shoot the same bands that my wife would shoot. They would shoot the same bands that I might shoot just for plinking. So you don't have to be overly obsessed with power when it comes to slingshots. You can still be accurate at distances.
Started out slow and work your way up. Now, if somebody wanted to go watch some competition or watch you guys in action, your meetup here is there a breakdown somewhere of where you guys travel around to, or where can people look for that kind of information?
Well, right now, it's still a really small thing. You know, folks will get together for a weekend and just camp and shoot, but we only have 2 organized tournaments in the U.S. right now. One is in western Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh. That is the first weekend in June of 2015. That's the largest attended shoot in the nation. This past year, we had folks from as far as California and Texas attended. That's a combination of competition and just, we refer to it as slingshot camp. It's where people who just, slingshots are a part of their life, come together and camp for several days. Shoot slingshots, trade slingshots.
You have vendors there, that kind of stuff?
We do have vendors there, and we do have a competition. And then we have the Midwest Slingshot Tournament, which is one up the road from you guys in Lafayette. And next year, that is going to be the 3rd weekend in July. And that one, I imagine, will be much more well attended than it was this past year. This past year was the first annual, and it was a great format. We had the nation's very best shooters there, and some of the shooting that was witnessed was just phenomenal.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys carry a lot of passion when you come with slingshots too. I mean, you guys travel from all over the place to come in and just meet together. I mean, there's really nothing in it. Like you go to some of the big shoot matches with firearms, and there's, money packages put together and, endorsements and all that kind of stuff. You guys do it just for the love of the sport.
More or less, yeah. Simple Shot we did put prize money on the table this past year for anybody that won the tournament shooting our slingshots. Nobody collected this year because most folks who are really serious about it make their own. So, but we're getting there. A lot of us would like to see it be an Olympic sport because it'd be a great Olympic sport. It's available to the world. But we also just like to see more crossing over into other shooting disciplines. Get folks that are, into the defensive pistol to consider the slingshot as a cross-training tool. And I think if we had some prize money on the table, it would draw those folks.
Awesome. Well, we're going to definitely come out for the next one next year. And that one's in Lafayette, Indiana. And it's going to be, you said, the 3rd weekend in July?
Yep.
Okay. Where can they find the information for that?
So whenever we have tournaments coming up, we always blog about them on our website. So basically look under our website, and as more tournaments start happening, we'll put up a calendar of events. But right now, there's just those two tournaments. So normally, 6-8 weeks out, we do a blog post about the tournament, what we know about it, what's coming up, the format, that sort of thing. Another great resource is the online forums for slingshots. There's quite a few of them now.
Any you would recommend?
Yeah, there's three great ones. There's one out of Germany called theslingshotforum.com, and that's run by a guy named Jorg Sprav. And if anybody's seen the crazy bald-headed German guy that makes rubber-powered weapons on YouTube, that's him.
Okay, I've seen him quite a few times. He's spectacular.
Yep, so his forum is geared more towards folks who are, there's some preppers there. They like their zombie culture there. And they like just big weapons that are rubber-powered that just fuck shit up, basically. They're a lot of fun, those guys. There's got one here in the U.S. It's called Slingshot Forum, just slingshotforum.com. And that is probably the premier forum on the Internet. And there you will find anything from target shooting to making your own to hunting. That's where most of the folks go. And then there's a new one that just started up out of Canada called theslingshotcommunity.com. And it's another one that's more geared towards folks, kind of an open sourced website where, hey, this is what I discovered with slingshots. This is a design I want to share with you. Some more community based. But There's tons of information on all 3 of those sites.
Yeah, I would say within the slingshot community, you guys are very adept at helping each other out. It's not oh my goodness, I've got this special design and it's the best one out there and nobody's going to know what the secret formula is. You guys are all willing to help each other out and just improve the sport in general itself, which I think is awesome.
Well, for the most part, we did have a manufacturer get a patent on a way that everybody makes their slingshots, and he's basically said you can't make your slingshots that way anymore because I own it. And it's a shame because I mean it's a slingshot, for Christ's sakes. It's not a nuclear reactor that has some sort of patentable. Anyway, you can tell I get a little upset about it, but things are changing. And this guy, I guess, is thinking that a big manufacturer is going to come along and take his patent and put his slingshots in, you know, Dick's Sporting Goods. Which, if he does, I think that's great, because that means that the sport has grown enough to support it. Where big vendors are willing to take a look at what they would think of as a retro slingshot. Because, you know, why would a little pocket slingshot be better than that big wrist rocket? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and we just have to educate the big box stores, the Cabela's, the Bass Pro Shops, the Walmarts, that yes, this is a great tool. So it's coming slowly, though. It's still very much a niche sport.
Well, I plan on spreading the word left and right about it, because I think it's definitely a great addition to any preparedness supply out there. You know, firearms they're limited. You know, you run out of ammo and it makes a great baseball bat. You know, but with a slingshot, if you have the ability and the talent behind it too, you can just pick up whatever. I mean, what can't you shoot with a slingshot?
Exactly.
If you had to. Plus, like you say, I mean, you're talking about just going out, cutting twigs off of a tree and being able to have the knowledge behind that to preform your own slingshot out in the middle of the woods if you have to.
Yeah, and it's really simple. We've actually got a video on our YouTube channel of me doing just that, of taking the shrink wrap bands that I told you about and cutting a tree fork, and it took me about 5 minutes to put that slingshot together. And
that's awesome.
Then after that, I had a plenty capable slingshot.
And like you said earlier, you know, it doesn't add a whole lot of weight to your bug out bag too. But you know, if you go to your website, though, okay, great that tree branches are great, but if you go to your website, you have some spectacular slingshots on there. I know Lady Pitbull was looking through them here just a minute ago, and there's one on there. Why don't you talk about like the different polymers and stuff? But you have one on there that's like $600, and not all of them are like that. Your slingshots are affordable. They are great material that you make them with. They're very sturdy, reliable. Like I said, we wouldn't endorse them if we don't own them ourselves. But you have one that's like $600. Why don't you tell everybody what that one's about?
Yeah, so I'll back up there. Let's say we have a Barlow knife, just an old Barlow that you buy at the hardware store with good carbon steel in it. And then let's say you have some $2,000 custom job made by Mr. Fancy Knife. Both cut. They both are made from steel, and they both function as cutting tools. The difference between the two is the $2,000 one, there's a lot of pride of ownership there. From a functional point of view, it's no better than the Barlow. Same thing with this slingshot, the $600 slingshot you're referring to. It's simply made from exotic hardwoods that's been very complex laminations. It's an art piece. It's fully functional, but it also, you can put it on your shelf and admire it. That's the only difference. It's not a better slingshot. It's not more functional. It's simply prettier.
Excellent analogy. Yeah. So,
but back to some of our other slingshots. A lot of folks will make them out of plywood, just marine grade cabinet plywood. And the reason is it's inexpensive and it's really, really tough. You can't break it. Kind of boring looking, but it serves the function. We make a lot of our slingshots out of high density polyethylene, so a marine board. And all that is just a really high strength thermoplastic. And we cut them out on a CNC router and finish them out to shape. And what that gives you is a slingshot that's lightweight. It floats. You cannot break it. You might be able to stretch it like taffy if you have enough force, but absolutely unbreakable and inexpensive. They average around $20 a piece.
Yeah, and different colors, to get different people involved. I don't see any Hello Kitty slingshots, though, thank goodness.
Oh, we do offer our shot in pink.
Oh,
and
we can deal with that.
A big manly man out in Utah, and he shoots a pink slingshot on principle. If anybody says anything to him, he just shows them how badass he is with that slingshot and they shut up. So
That's funny. We are down to like 3 minutes, and I always screw up the ending anyways. So, but why don't you tell everybody again your website, where they can track you down, and as we're going out here, you've got a couple minutes. Why don't you tell everybody what you want them to know about owning a slingshot and why it's important?
All right. Well, first off, the website again is www.simple-shot.com. We've got a contact form on there. If you ever need to get in touch with us, you can give us a call or send us an email. Be happy to talk with you.
Yeah, you guys have great customer service.
Well, we pride ourselves on that because, I mean, we're selling slingshots. We're selling fun. I mean, I'm thankful every day that I wake up, I get to go to work and sell people fun. That feels good. But one thing to know about slingshots is, although they may be regarded as toys, they're anything but. They deserve the same respect as any weapon. They're just as capable of inflicting harm on others and personal property. So never point a slingshot at something unintended to shoot. This is never sweep a crowd with your pistol. Just treat a slingshot the same way. The other thing is don't overthink it. It's simple. And don't be overly obsessed with power. Power will come. Just like any other shooting discipline, especially if you compare it to archery, you wouldn't want to overbow yourself in the beginning, meaning that you're pulling too much poundage. What that does is it hides mistakes in your technique. And technique is everything with a slingshot. The way you release the ammo from the pouch, that's the difference from hitting a bottle top and lighting a match. And lighting a match is very possible to do. So in the beginning, a lot of folks, they want more power. There's some people out there selling slingshots that, say they're 50-pound pull. Well, that's just ridiculous. 50-pound pull is not going to throw that small projectile any faster than a 20-pound pull. It's just going to be harder to pull. So start light, build up, figure out your technique, figure out your shooting form, and make sure it's repeatable, just like any other shooting discipline. Consistency is key. So as long as your shots are going to the same place, hitting your target and they're going to the same place, that's great. But if you're spraying the target, then you got a real problem. And people that start out too heavy will often get that, and they can't figure out where their inconsistency or lack of accuracy is coming from.
Start out light.